Well, g'day, or should I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. It's always a pleasure to be hosted on Modern Day Debate, the world's leading non-partisan neutral debating platform. My name is Ross Thatcher. I can be found on Quora and Facebook by that name. Currently enjoying yet another 30-day stint in Facebook's prejudice prison thanks to sharing facts about vaccines. I'm now known on YouTube as Iron Horse, formerly known as Flat Earth Aussie Jesus. Iron, because the initials of Flat Earth, FE, are the scientific symbol for iron, while my Christian name Ross, in ancient Teutonic, literally translates as horse. I almost added gold, symbolised as AU, which is also literally a symbol for Australia. But iron, gold, horse sounded just a little too pretentious, even for me. I'm quite happy for James to continue with the moniker I began this platform with, Flat Earth Aussie. And on that note, I'd like to thank James for inviting me onto this weighty matter, the Great Gravity Hoax, originally intended to be with a popular, regular debater. Unfortunately, or otherwise, he was unable to be here today, so I'd like to thank the late fill-in making his debut, a new face on the scene, and we'll see which part of his moniker he lives up to, whether he's a joke or if he's cool. Not that I'm one to make fun of a person's name, nor to attack that person. A cunning linguist like myself places great value on the phonetic vibration of sound, since the vibratory frequency of sound holds more weight than the manner in which it's spelt. Before the invention of the convention of the modern dictionary, it was common to use a multiple of variations to spell a word, and still, despite a consensus of the way a word is spelled, it might still hold multiple definitions, meaning it might mean many different meanings despite having a mean meaning, and I don't mean to be mean, just average. The etymology of a word gives greater insight into how it came into current usage. For example, a word that once meant to be exuberantly happy has now come to apply as a noun for a member of the Homo sapiens species who prefers to copulate with a member of the same biological sex. Now there's an interesting word too, biological. I wonder if there's such a thing as autobiological, or am I stretching the boundaries of lexicology too far? Lexicology, being the study of linguistics, or words, goes hand in hand, platonically speaking of course, with numerology, which is the study of numbers, which together could be described as the mathematics of language. When Nikola Tesla told us, quote, "In order to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." And that is the power of words. Be, here, now. Bee? That amazing insect that makes honey in accordance with the hive mind? Here? Of course I hear them, making a buzz. Now? Of course I'll be there in an hour. The phonetic sound is energy, frequency, and vibration, which is why the knowers, or Gnostics, have reminded us that the pen is mightier than the sword. A sword has might and power, but it's a severing tool, a weapon of destruction. But when Jesus, the Christed One, allegedly said, "I come not to bring peace, but a two-edged sword," he was literally speaking in parables. He knew that words are swords, and swords are words, and all words have more than one meaning. The pen is mightier than the sword. We contain animals in a pen. We lock lawbreakers in a penitentiary. So what is contained within a simple pen is the potential frequency and vibration of every word in existence. One of my favourite childhood authors also wrote short stories for adults. One particular old story was about an author who picked up a hitchhiker who described himself as a fingersmith. Not just a mere common pickpocket, as he explained, but a true artist in the ways of distract and deceive in order to relieve them of their things of value. The crafty, rat-like man, however, upon hearing of the driver is an author, a published writer, well, his respect went up immediately, as one artist respects another, and subsequently dubbed him a wordsmith. Now, most of us are familiar with a blacksmith, but none of us would suggest that he's a master of darkness, or things that are black. More likely than not, his moniker originated from his art of working the forge, and the subsequent soot and ash from heating and hammering iron in the forge coated him and his clothing with a film of black soot, which was what led to the term blacksmith, as opposed to his true art, forger of iron, as much to shod horses as to beat out swords. The irony that his art was done in a forgery is possibly where the origins of Black's law originated in the art of doublespeak, where the law of deception was masterminded to the point that the defendant facing the bar required an interpreter to face the charge, often a matter so grave it would be described as a very weighty matter. The scales of justice would weigh the evidence, and in the modern judiciary system, a jury of peers would have to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt if the prosecution had delivered a case sufficient to either incarcerate the charged person to a sentence in a penitentiary for a period, or if, in fact, the matter was so grave the weight hanging around his neck was sufficient to sentence the accused to a full stop. Sometimes the charge was as dastardly as copulation outside the sacred bounds of the sacrament of marriage. Known as carnal knowledge, a person found guilty would have his tombstone marked for all of his story to see, found under carnal knowledge. As he was sentenced to his final grave, eventually the number of such people indicted for such a crime grew to such proportions that the overworked stoning grave is abbreviated, it especially for those unable to pay the fee, to simply FUCK, found under carnal knowledge. Those paying final rites to honour the dead soon originated another new word to the English vernacular and would say, well, he's fucked. And so we find our way around to the gravity of the matter. Does it matter? Well, if you mind, it matters. If you don't mind, it won't. So what is mind? Do you mind? What does a miner mind, besides the coal the blacksmith inflames in his forge to beat iron into swords or shoes for a horse? If you mind, it matters. It's a state of mind. What's yours is mine, what's mine is mind. Do you possess possessions, or do they possess you? This is the grave weight of the matter. The etymological origins of the word gravity comes from the Latin term gravitas, sometimes also gravis. The literal translation of both simply means weight. Thus, we're discussing the weight of matter. My opponent was probably expecting me to focus on the fact that gravity to this day is just a theory, which indeed it is, but then I expect the usual obfuscation of doublespeak champions to declare that in science, almost phonetically identical to seance, the conjuring of departed spirits or entities no longer embodied in physical matter, that theory has a completely different meaning from what the average indentured servant / taxpayer understands it to mean without being mean, only average. Hence we must appeal to the educated interpreter of knowledge to give us the Black's Law definition. We're getting juicy now. When you ask any scientists, any astrophysicists, what is gravity? They shrug. They honestly declare, we don't know. Next question. They can tell us what it does, but what is it? It's a simplistic theory, words designed to satisfy a young inquiring mind into the concept of living on a spherical open-air planet spinning and hurling through a vacuum of space as to why and how everyone, everywhere, can always exist on the top of a ball and no one is slipping over the edges or dropping off the bottom. They call it the force, but that wasn't scientific sounding enough. Let's use the educated words which we use everywhere in science, the Latin term gravitas. But they know that means weight. Well, modernise it and call this weighty matter gravity. What does it matter? Physics, after all, is merely the observation of how physical matter behaves. We'll even write down some of these laws of matter. An object at rest remains at rest unless another force acts upon it. Seems reasonable. The force keeping it at rest must therefore be its own weight or mass. Conversely, we can assume that an object in motion remains in motion unless another force is acted upon it. It can't be gravity, which is the weight of its own mass. The internal force that stops it must be friction. The external force, just put the pen through the paper, why don't I? External force that stops it must be friction, restriction, resistance. So what is physics? The science of physical matter, the material world. Matter, in its own right, is inert. It takes a force to redistribute matter. That force is energy. Go back to Tesla. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. If you mind, it matters. So if an object is in motion, let's say an apple drops from a tree, it will remain in motion unless another force acts upon it. Enter Adolf Neutron, copper knickers, no, arrow toes to the knees. One of them brainiacs anyway, from centuries ago, who was still dipping ostrich feathers in inkwells to scribe the parchment. One of them got behind the apple good. One of them got beaned by the apple good. Yeah. But what happened when the physical matter of his skull and brains intermediated between the object in motion and not being in motion? Resistance. That apple would, according to the laws of measurable and observable science, lawfully have kept dropping forever, apparently at the rate of 9.81 metres per second squared, at least until another force acted upon it. And what force could that possibly be? Resistance. Resistance due to the physical mass, the density of said mass, of sufficient density to arrest it, to bring it to rest, to make it wait. When you're forced to wait in line, the only thing that compels you to move is your will, your desire, your compunction to burn calories, to create a driving force that will make you, that will move you from your place of rest, where you were waiting. Why were you waiting? Were you holding mass? What was holding you up? The ground? Or the flow of currency from people being charged ahead of you? I think I've said enough to dismiss any hope my opponent may have to respond to the fact that gravity is a hoax. In the small time space I found to run some dirt on him, it seems he's totally politically motivated. He has no credentials in either physics or the nature of reality, from which physics is but a sub-branch, but he does seem to possess an end game of seeking power. I found it on his link. Go take a look. How do you gain power? Well, you must be charged for it. You charge your phone, your batteries. There needs to be an energy exchange. So when you're seeking power, you're looking to take, not give. A vampire is the end point, the full stop. A river has currency because the banks support it. When the river flows, it gives life to all its constituents. It is the living life force of the veins of the living mother, whose very breath we breathe to stay alive, whose blood we drink to nurture our blood, whose flesh we consume to sustain our flesh. When we go to the grave, we return back to that which she lent us. We return back that which she lent us. 6 foot down under. We pile matter, or martyr, the Mother Earth, upon our empty shell so that the seed may grow and join the ancestors in the sky, shining their unique vibratory frequency down upon us. Only in the heliocentric dialect do we require weight or mass to become an invisible force of attraction with no valid description, evidence or logical explanation. Simply, mass stuff seems to be falling and accelerating at close to 10 meters per second, even though nothing is ever observed to double the rate of drop every 10 meters it passes or drops through. It's simply the rate of any mass dropping through the medium of air to get to a high bridge. Drop a baseball and a shot put of equal size, and both hit the water at exactly the same time. Then your magical invisible pulling force gets selective. It gladly pulls the lead ball down to its inky depths, but tells the lightweight ball to go back to the surface now. You've got too much hot air in you. But the density of the lead, your God of the Gap's gravity kindly welcomes it down. Such a grave matter. If relative density gives some things buoyancy, then surely the only mathematical equation we're required to adhere to is the relative density between an object and the medium it's in. The resistance factor of the medium relative to the density of the object. That's it. The only time we need accept any electrostatic force of attraction is should you invoke the caveman dish, crapulio, where objects suspended will never truly be at rest anyway, nor will the fluid air surrounding them. So left to their own manufactured devices, they will eventually come to rest against something which resists them moving any further, possibly assisted by a what? I'm just going to cross that out. Possibly assisted by an electrostatic charge created from air molecules rubbing off on them. Weird, hey? Rubbing on to get off? What an electro-stimulative world we live upon. I'm almost finished. If I'm going to be a part of a mass debate, I'm not going to stop until the money shot. My sword is honed on both edges, but my pen is still about to stab its fatal blow. In the philosophy of mass attraction, the pulling force is attributed to the attraction of mass. The greater the girth or width of the earth, the more things of matter are attracted to it. Yet, to prevent the moon crashing into earth, the earth and other wandering stars crashing into the sun, and the sun being attracted to everything else in the galaxy, and every galaxy beyond us, everything colliding back into the singularity which created the Big Bang, well, we have dark matter, Black's law, everything which keeps everything within its place, according to the observable laws of density and buoyancy, or to be scientific, relative density and resistance. I look forward to seeing how Joe Cool can respond to that.